And then things started to sort of converge in ways that I hadn't anticipated, like the year 2008. I actually went through a very big breakup of my business and my personal relationship. And my daughter was really starting to, I think she was 12 at the time, and she was really starting to feel the effects of sort of the cumulative things that were happening around her. And that ended up coming out as a very severe mental disorder. And she suffered very deeply with depression. And at the same time, I'm actually trying to make a living, trying to keep it together. And I think the key piece for me was that I wasn't fully embracing my role as the mother of somebody who had this illness to such a degree.
Hello again, everybody. Welcome to Breakthroughs with Jordan Murphy. On the show, I have conversations about the defining moments that shape our lives. And on today's show, my guest is going to be discussing with me the daunting realization that her daughter was battling with depression and how she learned to navigate and heal not only her daughter, but herself in the process. My guest is Dominique Pacheco. Now, Dominique is a pretty extraordinary woman. She actually started in the marketing industry many years ago, worked with some big dogs like Nike, and also was in the art industry and has recently reinvented herself in the financial services industry. So clearly, Dominique has worn many hats, and she also happens to be an extraordinary mom. And her breakdown and breakthrough conversation today with us touches on that, touches on her being a single mom, living in Sonoma County, and some of the issues that she had to overcome with her relationship with her daughter. So, Dominique, thanks for being with me today.
Thanks for having me, Jordan. Nice to see you.
So, why don't we just jump right in? It's a great subject to discuss. I think it's one that everybody can identify with who has children, number one. But your story goes a little bit broader than just being a mom, right?
Yes. I've been a single mom since my daughter was 4. And at that time, I was living in Marin County, just north of San Francisco, and decided that a great place to raise her would be in the small town of Sebastopol in Sonoma County, about an hour plus north of SF.
Okay. And
so when she was about 4, we moved up there. Beautiful place, incredibly happy environment.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous area.
She went to a great school. We put her into a Waldorf school, and it's a well-known school there, and she fit into that environment beautifully. Everything that you would want for a child, you would think would be a perfect environment, like 22-acre working farm, healthy, wholesome food, air, water, all that stuff. And
I'm waiting for like a dun dun dun, and then it was looking like a tranquil lifestyle.
And I also had my own business. I had a video production company with a partner. We were able to really work our schedules in a way that worked for kids. And I really had sort of the ideal setup for a really easy transition between motherhood and working full time as an entrepreneur. And I took advantage of that. It was a great scenario. And then things started to sort of converge in ways that I hadn't anticipated, like the year 2008.
Yeah.
And 2008 was a tough year for, I'd say, the vast majority of people on the earth, really.
That covers just about everybody.
It was an unavoidable landscape. And so what ended up happening was I actually went through a very big breakup of my business and my personal relationship. And my daughter was really starting to, I think she was 12 at the time, and she was really starting to feel the effects of sort of the cumulative things that were happening around her. And that ended up coming out as a very severe mental disorder. And she suffered very deeply with depression. And so when that started to happen, as I think most people who've not had experience with that, my response to it was, okay, come on. It's all going to get better. Let's get better. Let's snap out of it.
Let's fix this.
And of course I'm a fixer. So, problem solving, trying to figure out ways to make it happen, all of that. The long and the short of it was that the cumulative effect of that was even more negative. And so she began to suffer even further. And at the same time, I'm actually trying to make a living, trying to keep it together. And I think the key piece for me was that I wasn't fully embracing my role as the mother of somebody who had this illness to such a degree.
Right.
And instead of making it easier and go through it faster, I actually delayed the response. And so go ahead.
Clarify that though for me. So you delayed the response because you weren't acknowledging what was really going on? Is that what you mean?
I was acknowledging what was going on for her.
Yeah.
I don't think I was acknowledging what was going on for me.
Interesting.
And what I mean by that is that instead of really embracing and really seeking the degree of help that I needed, I was really focused on what she needed.
So you weren't taking care of yourself before you were taking care of her. Wasn't that analogy about like when you're in the airplane and they say put on the oxygen masks, put it on yourself before you put it on your child?
I use that quite often. And in retrospect, it's easy to see, but at the time I was so, engulfed in what was happening that I wasn't really seeing how my part in it was probably the most important part. And I wasn't really getting it. So as she was going through the process and I was going through it too, I think that I actually prolonged the process.
Got it.
And not intentionally, of course.
No, of course not.
But I was really looking for a solution to the problem. And I think sometimes when you need a breakthrough, part of the issue of not getting a breakthrough is that you're looking for the solution instead of being in acceptance of change.
Yep.
And so that was really a big one for me. And in the meantime, we were living in Northern California, but I'm from Santa Barbara and my family is here in Southern California. And we would often, come down maybe 2 times a year is what we would do. And so in the midst of all this, it was very challenging. I'm very close with my family, but they didn't really see what was really happening. So they weren't able to really help and I wasn't able to ask for help. And I remember my breakthrough, I've had a lot of breakthroughs in my life. Sure. I've done a lot of different things. I've come to a lot of different realizations and I'm not one to shy away from change. So, I'll change things up when they need to change things up. But this particular situation kind of locked me into behaviors that didn't really allow for my breakthrough. Mainly that I was just trying to keep it together.
I can only imagine you're a single mom. You're trying to support yourself and your daughter is caving in.
Yeah.
So this, you're wanting to protect her.
Absolutely.
You don't have the tools really. You're not an expert until you're confronted with something where your child is going through that kind of trauma. Then you're in it.
Right.
You're in it.
Right.
And to get out of it and get that perspective outside of it it's challenging because you want to fix it. You want to make it better. You don't want her to suffer.
Right. And she was going through things that eventually have enabled her to take control and to actually, she's doing beautifully right now.
Yeah.
But once again, the focus was on what was necessary for her to do. And my focus was less on what I needed to do. But I knew I needed to do something. And I was literally, because I do come from a strategy and problem solving background in my work, I was always trying to solve a problem instead of actually seeing how I could actually make a big change to solve the problem. So, I remember my moment. It was one of those breakthrough things that happens in your life where you're on one side 1 second and on the other side the next. We were on a trip to Southern California to visit family, and I always go in the ocean. I'm an ocean person. I grew up in Santa Barbara, and that is really a touchstone for me. So I was in the water, and I was probably in a space that I didn't find myself very often in those days, which was feeling really good and relaxed and on top of myself and in alignment. And it wasn't even a particularly beautiful day. The ocean wasn't particularly warm. It wasn't like this, like ideal Caribbean situation. If you know Southern California water, it's usually pretty chilly and it's not always gorgeous at the beach. So I was in the water and I remember distinctly having a voice come to me and say, you need to move to Los Angeles. And Jordan, I've never had that thought in all my life.
Interesting.
Never lived in LA. I went to college in San Diego. I grew up in Santa Barbara and then I moved to Northern California, lived all over, but never ever wanted to live in LA. Because like many people, I had a lot of opinions about LA.
Yeah.
Oh, it's that kind of place.
Yeah.
There's those kind of people, the traffic, the smog. I mean, all of those things, right? Yeah. And that thought came in. And what was really interesting was that I actually didn't reject the thought. I embraced the thought. How interesting. What would that look like was sort of my next, was the other side of the breakthrough.
You started to entertain the possibility.
And I think for anybody who's experienced a really life-changing breakthrough, the difference is that you literally then go to work on the idea.
Right.
And so all of a sudden, instead of the no way, that doesn't work for me, I can't imagine that, it became what if. And I actually found myself literally on top of myself for a change, which was a new sensation. A familiar sensation, again, once it happened. And I think that's the other thing about breakthroughs. It's like you might not feel like that is something you do, but all of a sudden you feel like it's right.
Yeah, you like click back in, like you said, to alignment. You click into alignment and it feels right. It just feels good. And you know it when you're in it and you know it when you're not in it.
That's right. That's right. And suddenly I was in it. And not only that, but for my planning mind, I had a plan. I suddenly had a plan. Right. And although I had no idea how I was going to accomplish this plan, my mind started to go to work on aligning with things that would come across my path. And suddenly everything started to line up in front of me.
What was it, do you think, about LA, of all cities, that was going to be salvation or a solution?
So the dramatic change in Los Angeles from a little town of, 8,000 people in Sonoma County. First of all, there's that.
Right.
But also too, it's colder there. It's less inviting. It's less warm. And what I think is interesting about Los Angeles particularly is, LA is not a place where people are necessarily from.
Yes.
LA is a place that people come to recreate themselves.
Lots of transplants.
And so you're not among people who are like, oh, you're not from here. You're among people who are like, where are you from? What's your story? Right. It's a storytelling town.
Yeah.
And although I don't live in Los Angeles proper, I live in the South Bay in Palos Verdes. It's a place where anything can happen. And I was kind of ready for that kind of miracle for my daughter. Like anything needs to happen right now.
So there just seemed to be more opportunities, new possibilities, a broader space to expand in.
She was getting ready to graduate from high school.
Right.
I was in a business where I knew I could do freelance work and I could get work here. I didn't necessarily have to have a job in order to feel good about making the change. The geography change wasn't really a change that was going to affect my ability to make a living. I'd been working virtually for many, many years. Right. I'm used to being part of temporary teams. And so I knew I could make all that work.
Right.
It was the logistics. And from that moment that I was in the ocean and had that realization to the day I moved here was almost 2 years. Because there was a lot to take care of and a lot to shift into. But what ended up happening was that my entire life sort of opened up and my ability to accept what was coming to me instead of sort of batting things off suddenly became, a skill I had again. because I got to the other side.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it's great. I mean, this is kind of one of the things about these conversations that I find awesome is that everyone has their own story, their own version of the breakdown breakthrough. But at the end of it, it seems to be there is this clarity that arrives in the breakthrough. That clarity, that space for possibility, that space for choice emerges across the board, no matter what your story is.
Yes.
So that's awesome. It's funny you said something actually, and I don't know if this makes any sense, but you mentioned Sonoma and the weather. Was the weather, did it tend to be more overcast or?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
I always had that experience. I grew up in Northern California also. And when I moved down to Los Angeles, I had this awareness that you can be depressed in Los Angeles, but it's kind of tough to be depressed when it's 75 degrees and sunny and beautiful weather.
That's true.
It's easier to be, if you're having bouts with depression, it's easier to be depressed in an overcast, gloomy, small, enclosed environment. And it sounds like your city might have been a little more of that.
It's very interesting because also I think that what happens here is, I think one of the things that people who don't live here experience about the idea of Los Angeles is, people are shallow. Oh, everybody wants to be an actor. Oh, plastic surgery, all the traffic, all of these things. And the truth of the matter is that I find here, and it might just be my attitude, that people are lighter here. They're honestly more open and friendly. And I also believe that you find what you're looking for.
Completely. If you're looking for all those elements, you're going to find them.
But I will tell a funny story that Tessa and I got here and we went to the Trader Joe's in our neighborhood and she was with me and we were making note. It was the first time we'd been out grocery shopping together. And she's like, Mom, everybody's so friendly. and we were laughing about it. I said, yeah, move to LA and people will become friendly. We lived in a small town where literally you see everybody in the small town.
Right. And
because of that, there's kind of a disengagement. They don't want to be too familiar in a way.
Right.
But that might have been just my experience. But what was so funny was we get to the checkout line and somebody rushes to go pack our bags. And she says to the checker, we come from Santa Rosa, where our Trader Joe's was, and nobody used to check. We used to have to put our own stuff in our bags.
Right.
And the person looks at us and they're like, that's not our policy.
That's not customer service.
And we just started laughing about it. It's like, move to LA and get customer service. Move to LA, have strangers smile at you.
That's right.
So I don't know if that has anything to do with the broader population so much as it had to do with my attitude and what I was seeking when I found here, what I was seeking to find here. But I did find that. And then all of a sudden, everything started opening up. Literally, my opportunities in work started to open up. I actually met you. We worked on a project together.
That's right.
And then in meeting you, then we ended up doing more work together. And it's just been, it was
in that time period.
It was.
Wow. Okay. So this is recent.
Yeah.
Very recent.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're a recent transplant.
Yeah. It'll be 4 years in August that I moved here.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, I'm glad to hear that your daughter is well. In fact, actually, you and I talked about the possibility of she and I doing an interview because she has a story to tell.
She's got an amazing breakthrough story.
Yeah.
Amazing story.
So just to recap then, you were in a situation with your daughter being a single mom. She seemed to be spiraling out. And in a moment in the ocean, you had an awareness that you needed to literally pick up and move to Los Angeles.
It's true.
And reinvent yourself.
Yep.
Recreate your relationship with your daughter. What do you think it was? People always say, you can't run away from your problems, right?
Correct.
So just because you were in Santa Rosa and having problems doesn't mean Los Angeles is going to mean you don't have any problems.
Absolutely.
So what was it you got to Los Angeles, you still had your daughter. Your daughter was still struggling.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Had you started taking care of you?
I think that what happened was once I acknowledged that change had to be that dramatic, and it was a dramatic change. I just the other day said to my parents, that was the single hardest thing I've ever done. And I've done some challenging things, but Physically, it was really difficult to move out of a house we'd lived in for 14 years.
Wow, right.
I also, ended up renting that house to renters and then making the move and moving in here and getting everything settled. It doesn't seem like much when you talk about it.
Oh, no, it sounds like a lot. I mean, moving is one of the most traumatic, intense, transformational experiences people have. It's not something that people go, let's move again this year.
Right.
And I think that there's something on a energetic level of cleaning and clearing and letting go of and reorganizing. There's something about that energetically that does do work on you.
Oh, yeah.
So, it's not doesn't sound like a small task.
And also I downsized while I was doing that too. So you talk about letting go.
You simplify.
Very, very interesting. What do I need as opposed to what do I think I want? The letting go and also opening yourself. I just yesterday said, you really do have to be careful what you ask for because the universe delivers exactly what you ask for and exactly the way you've asked for it. So I tend to be somebody who's had lucky geography. I always live in a place that I envision first. And that's my life. I've been fortunate that way.
Right.
And my particular situation right now, I was asking to be able to have an office very close to my home. I was asking to be near the ocean. And I was asking to have a really peaceful environment. And it's so funny when you say that to somebody who doesn't live in Los Angeles. They're like, you're moving to LA to have a peaceful environment. It's like, well, you've been to my house.
Yes.
You would agree with me.
It's beautiful.
It's a really peaceful place.
Yeah.
And
well, it's on the outskirts of what we call, Los Angeles proper, if you will. But it's beautiful down there.
And so, I ended up manifesting the life that I was asking for. But until I actually allowed myself to listen to the opportunity to have it, that was what I was missing. I wasn't allowing myself even the opportunity to have what I wanted because I was so focused on negativity, really. And so once I got to the other side of that, I'd have to say my life's changed completely.
Well, I heard a great saying, I think it was Wayne Dyer might have said it, but he might have stole it from somebody else. But when you change what you're focused on, what you're focused on changes.
Absolutely.
And you shifted your thinking around your circumstances and your circumstances transformed.
Yeah.
It's just kind of, it's like the law of the universe. And we can go, oh, that's woo woo, it works and you can agree with it or disagree with it, but that's what's so, it seems.
And I also think, I'm talking about a decade here. It's 2018. This all sort of culminated in that date of 2008 when things were really, when the world shifted. And I was not in the position to, fully be prepared for that shift.
Sure.
And so coming at, shifting and then shifting into a place that you don't want to be by, certainly part of that was my choices to that point, but then to have the world shift and not be in the situation to make the move.
Yeah.
I could have made then. Actually now on the other side of that, a decade later, I'm so grateful. I am so grateful for that breakthrough. I'm so grateful for every single one of those transitions. I'm grateful for 2008. I have a perspective now about the way the world can be that I always want to anticipate, and I never want to go back to being in that place of feeling I didn't have a lot of choices. And I'm also grateful that it took me the amount of time that it took me because it's given me a certain peace and calmness and a certain patience for having the life that I want to have. So I'm living the dream.
You're doing great. I'm inspired. I don't want to even mess that up. We're going to leave it on that note because that's an awesome way to finish this conversation. So thanks, Dominique. I appreciate your being here.
Thank you, Jordan.
And stay tuned for more episodes of Breakthroughs with Jordan Murphy. Check out my website at breakthroughswithjordanmurphy.com. Stay connected on Instagram at JordanMurphy1025 and Twitter at JordanDMurphy. And if you have a great story to share, as I'm sure many of you do, go to my website at breakthroughswithjordanmurphy.com and shoot me an abbreviated version of your story to my email. I'll give it a read and maybe share a couple of them on the show. Hello again, everybody. Welcome to Breakthroughs with Jordan Murphy. On the show, I have conversations about the defining moments that shape our lives. And on today's show, my guest is going to be discussing with me the daunting realization that her daughter was battling with depression and how she learned to navigate and heal not only her daughter, but herself in the process. My guest is Dominique Pacheco.